All right, now we're recording, we're official. So, hey, welcome everybody to the training Q&A kickoff webinar with yours truly, Seth, Coach Seth of Kickoff Running. And really pleased to be with you guys tonight. And we have people from all over the country, really, who have registered for this webinar, getting ready for not only the Chicago Marathon, but the New York City Marathon, and a few that have already started training for the Berlin Marathon, all fall marathons. So welcome, and thanks for letting me join you for a few minutes tonight. So as you may see or have seen in the chat box, everybody is going to be muted tonight except for myself, and but there is a chat box there. And if you have questions, I encourage you to type your questions in, and after I get through my little short presentation, I'm going to go ahead and answer everybody's questions. But if you have something that's pressing and you need answered right away as I'm going through the presentation, definitely type that into the chat box. But if there's any technical difficulties, I'll do my very best to get us back on track. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me. All right. Let me get this up. Bear with me as this pops up here. All right, everybody. So again, welcome to tonight's webinar. Awesome to have you. I think we're going to go through some really good information tonight. Hopefully we get all of your questions answered, but of course, if we don't, I am available really at your beck and call to make sure that we get all of your training related and running related questions answered from not only now, but until race day this fall. Starting off with a little trivia. Did you know that less than 1% of the world's population has successfully completed a marathon? I think that statistic to me is mind-blowing. I'm not quite sure if it's because they have the sense to not try or if it's just that darn hard, which I tend to agree with the latter. But obviously what you're about to do in a few months, or if you've already ran a marathon before, truly puts you in rarefied air. And many of our runners on the webinar tonight and who are going to be listening to the recording are running for charity, and truly running for a charity and a cause that's greater than yourself makes this a truly special endeavor. But for a little bit of engagement to everybody that's on right now, type in how many marathons you've already ran, or also type in if this is going to be your very first marathon. Denise has ran 3. That's great. Jennifer 4. Do we have any? Oh, I've run 2 Bostons for Children's Hospital. Great job, Cheryl. John 3. Do we have any rookies? This is going to be their very first marathon on with us right now. Well, it looks like I'm talking to a bunch of veterans tonight, so that's great. And I think that we can have a really great conversation. But thanks for sharing that with me. So let's just do a real quick systems check before we start training on Monday. Obviously, you're getting ready to embark on a 20-week training program. Those of you who are training for the Chicago Marathon, and if you're training for Berlin, you're in the middle of an 18-week program. And obviously New York starts here in about a month. But really the programs that I sent out, each and every one of them really is built with the assumption that you've been consistently running for the past 12 to 6 months. Now, we don't have any rookies or first-time marathoners on the call right now, but we're certainly going to have some listening to the recording. But it's pretty safe to say that with the crowd that we have, the audience that we have right now, that this is probably not an issue. But it really does assume that you've been running consistently for the last 6 to 12 months. Maybe you haven't been marathon training. Maybe you've done a half marathon or a race of a shorter distance, or you've just been running several days a week for months on end. but it really does assume that you have a base level of fitness and you're not coming into it cold. I probably know the answer to this question since, again, we don't have any newbies, but have you been properly fitted for running shoes? If not, get in there this weekend before training starts and get fitted. Go to your local running store, have an expert gait analysis done, and make sure that you're in the right pair of shoes. Do you have your running specific socks ready to go? Other running apparel? These are all things to check off the list before you get started in training. Know when you're going to fit your workouts in, your runs in. Have a plan and a support system in place. For those of you who have families and other people to consider, maybe it's just not yourself, this can always be challenging. So make sure you have that plan in place. And then most importantly, and for those of you who are running for charity, maybe you already know this, but know your why. Know why you're training, why you're doing this, because undoubtedly as the months go on and the temperatures heat up, and certainly on race day, you're going to have a firm grasp of why you're doing this, because you're going to question yourself more than likely. So have an idea of your why, and that will make the process and really your race day experience, I think, more beneficial. And I don't want to say easier, but that will certainly help you as the miles go on. So I really wanted to break this down into my top 10 marathon tips for success. Now, certainly there's numerous others, and we've probably all seen other tips that we've learned over the years and gathered from other people. But these are really 10 tips that I find to be pretty important and really are bedrocks of how I develop my programs. But number one, consistency is king, and this is our number one tip in running. You can't become a quote unquote good runner or have a positive training experience unless you're consistent and putting in the miles and sticking to the plan. And I'm sure we've all experienced where we've had dips in training, whether it be to illness or injury or just life got in the way, and we saw our running performance be negatively impacted. So consistency is going to be king. Don't let the moment or the training get bigger than what it really is. Just really take it day by day and focus on your next day's workout. You probably saw in the programs that warming up and cooling down, there's an emphasis placed on both of those. Well, what if I told you that you had an 80% chance when you walked out of your house that you were going to get hit over the head with an anvil? You'd probably say, well, Seth, I'm not going to walk out of my house. Or what if I told you, for those of you who had children, that your son or daughter, if they were to start a specific sport or activity, that they had over an 80% chance of getting hurt. Now, this isn't to scare anybody away from running, because running is obviously an amazing sport and the thing that I love to do the most. But there is a startling statistic out there that over 80% of runners get injured annually. And I find that doing some of the small things can really reduce that number. So things like warming up, an effective 5 to 10 minute dynamic warm up, like you'll find in your program key for your training plans, and an effective cool down will really jumpstart the recovery process from one run to the next. Develop a daily mobility practice. Think foam rolling, soft tissue work. A lot of times, aches and pains, injuries can be attributed to soft tissue, not necessarily skeletal issues. So it's a good idea, and a practice that I like to adopt and have adopted for years that I've had success with is really spending the last 10 to 15 minutes of my day before I go to sleep, rolling out any sort of adhesions or those knots in your muscles and working through those, especially through kind of the trouble spots or the areas that tend to affect us runners, like our hips, our glutes, our quads. Those are really fun places to really dig into and address. But spending the time and doing that on a daily, if not every other day basis, really will make a big difference in your training. And for those of us who maybe necessarily aren't 20 years old and have a few years on that 20-year-old, doing this is always a good idea, and it's going to help you stay healthy. In my book, strength training is a priority. It's a must do. It's not a nice to do. So that's why you see strength training anywhere between 2 to 3 days per week prescribed in the training programs. Think of this as another way to minimize your injury risk. And the programs that are prescribed in the workouts, or the workouts that are prescribed in the programs, are very runner specific and focus on that core hip glute region. The next three kind of all go hand in hand together. Everybody, it's first, run easy. Unless runs are prescribed to a certain pace, whether it be half marathon pace or marathon pace, plus or minus a few seconds here or there per mile, we're going to be running most of our runs by the 3 C's of pacing. Our runs should be comfortable, they should be conversational if you're running with a friend, and they should be under control. So building that aerobic base and running easy on most of our runs are really what's going to allow us to stay healthy. And it's truly building that aerobic base that ultimately is going to allow us to run faster. We're going to obviously be running long. The most important workout in any given week of training is going to be that weekend long run. Obviously, that's when you're most closely mimicking race day conditions. It's when you're going to be able to effectively practice your nutrition and hydration fueling strategy. So, without a doubt, prioritize that weekend long run. Those are runs that we never want to miss in training. And then, when appropriate, and depending on the program that you're following, we're going to be running fast. If you're truly going to achieve your race day goal, whether that is running a 3-hour marathon or a 5-hour marathon or something in between, we need to get comfortable with running or training at our desired race day pace. So there's certain workouts that are prescribed in the programs that have us doing that, more specifically towards the sharpening or race specific training part of the plans. Now, be accountable. This seems very much like common sense, but really there are no shortcuts or hacks to training for a marathon. Nowadays, people want to know, what's the quickest way to get from point A to point B, but there really are no shortcuts or hacks to training for 26.2 miles, as probably most of you, if not all of you, know who've done marathons. Even in the half marathon, there are times where you can even almost kind of, for lack of a better term, fake your way through training. There's no faking your way through training if you truly want to have a successful, enjoyable, memorable marathon race day experience. We want to be realistic. Today is May 17th. Training starts next week. The Chicago Marathon seems pretty far away, 20 weeks out, October 7th. But you can only start from where you're at now. So you may want to run a 3.5-hour marathon on October 7th. And I'm not going to tell you that you can't, or whatever that goal is, but is that realistic? Are you basing that off of a version of yourself that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago? How are you coming up with that goal? Does the last 6 to 12 months really dictate that that's realistic for you? That's something that you can shoot for. And those are conversations that we can certainly have, if not now, but offline, moving forward and throughout training. And then finally here, the other 23 hours of the day, if you're like me, I'm an AM runner, I like to get in and get my workouts done at the very start of the day. And you may get a great 60 to 90 to 120 minute workout in right to start the day, and you're ready to tackle the day. But if that 1 to 2 hour workout is followed by 8 to 10 hours of sitting, whether it be in the car or at work or at home, well, you've effectively almost diminished all the benefits that you really gained during that workout, during that run in the morning. So if that's you and you're saying, well, gosh, what can I do? Find creative ways to implement standing and walking breaks throughout your day. Hydration is obviously what I'm going to talk about next, but have an excuse. We all need to be hydrating, especially throughout the summer while we're training. Have an excuse to get up every 30 minutes to go fill up your water bottle. But think about that. That's something to be mindful about. Hydration, obviously. This is hydration and sleep tend to be kind of the low-hanging fruit that I find, and a lot of my clients feedback that is lacking. So we're going to be doing a marathon nutrition webinar in a couple weeks with our resident dietitian, Tom Jordan. He's going to delve much more deeply into nutrition and hydration and be able to answer specific questions. But as a general rule of thumb, we want to be shooting for half of our body weight in ounces of daily ounces that we're taking in, especially during training, or even up to a full 3 liters of fluids per day. So that's something to think about. And then finally, sleep. What does that look like? Some people just are genetically dispositioned to needing less sleep, 5 hours or so. I'm not one of those people. I find that I operate best on 7+ hours, but know what type of sleeper you are and certainly prioritize. We're all going to be tired from training in addition to everyday life. So you may need to carve into your schedule where maybe you're going to sleep 30 to 60 minutes earlier than what you normally would. And that's probably not a bad idea. But remember, we're not actually making gains in fitness while we're running. We're actually tearing our bodies down, tearing apart muscle. We're making gains when we're recovering, when we're sleeping. Just to touch on the 3 phases of your training plan that you've probably all seen, just to kind of roll through these quickly. The foundation phase, or the base building phase of your training plan, is really when we're developing an aerobic base to handle the greater volume and more intense running later on in the training block during the sharpening phase. I think that this phase is where we're really developing good habits. We're building both physical and mental toughness and resiliency. Those good habits are learning how to run by the 3 C's that we mentioned, running easy. We're implementing, if we don't already, good warm-up and cool-down techniques, learning how to implement strength training and rest into an overall training program before we move into the sharpening phase, or really what I call the race-specific phase. This might be the time in the training where you have some strategically implemented races put into your training programs. This is where you're going to incur the biggest volume of training and faster running, whether that be in the form of fartleks, progression runs, or which are really multi-pace runs, and certainly race pace training runs. And the sharpening phase, especially in those long weekend runs that we talked about, are really dress rehearsal or practice for race day. This is really where you're going to try to mimic race day, your race day experience. And then finally, what I call the celebration phase, or the post-race phase, is really where I'm going to take an inventory of what did and did not work, both in training and during the race, and obviously when we're going to be recovering before we start working towards our next goal. But it's also, and most importantly, a time to revel in your accomplishments. So bear with me 1 second, guys, as I think we are having a little bit of here we go. Technical difficulties. We're going to be rolling into the Q&A part of this, and I want to leave the bulk of the time for those of you who are on the webinar to ask questions or type questions in. But just as a reminder, we do have some upcoming webinar dates. All are on a Thursday, June 7th at 6:30. We are going to be talking with Tom Jordan, who is a registered dietitian. This is probably the most heavily attended webinar every summer, so I encourage you to register. But of course, there will be that live playback. Thursday, June 28th, we're going to be talking strength training and why it's important with Denise Smith of Smith Physical Therapy and Running Academy here in the Chicago area. And then finally, on July 12th, we're going to be talking injury prevention with Karen Shanahan of Athletico Physical Therapy. Athletico Physical Therapy is the physical therapy provider of the Bank of America Chicago Marathon. These are not the only webinars that we will have. We will have probably another 1 or 2 Before race day, we'll certainly have a race prep webinar before the races in the fall. But definitely make sure you register for those. But again, we will be sending out the recordings afterwards. And as we roll to the ending of this webinar, just a little inspiration and some quotes to think about. We don't rise to the level of our expectations. We actually fall to the level of our training. And I love that because we all probably have expectations of training and what we expect or hope race day to be like. But really, ultimately, when you're standing in that starting corral this fall, you're going to fall to the level of your training. So again, it goes back to there's no faking our way through training for a marathon. If you put the work in, more than likely, you're going to be ready to accomplish your goals. This next one I think is so true. You know, whether you think you can or cannot, you're probably right. Really, that's all about going into training and going into the race with a positive attitude. Going into it unsure. I mean, it's one thing to be nervous. I think that's, or a little anxious. I think that's totally natural and that's our human tendency. But you know, go into it, and I'm assuming, and I think it's probably true for those of us who've ran before a marathon, we know how hard it is, but we know that we can finish. But for those of you who are going to be listening on the recording who are going to be training for your first marathon, know that you're here for a reason and that you have support and a support group, whether it be family or friends, or certainly myself here to support you. So feel confident in that and know that you can do it. And then finally, run when you can, walk if you have to, crawl if you must, just never give up. It's really just taking that day by day mentality and knowing that some days are going to be great. And there's going to be other runs where you feel like you're never going to be able to successfully finish not only the run, but the marathon itself. But just keep everything in perspective. If you have to walk, there's no shame in that. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And then finally, when all else fails, coined by Walt Disney. Let's see here. Well, the slide was supposed to be in there. One of my favorite quotes is just keep moving forward, which is really our company motto. But that's all you can do. Just take one day at a time, keep moving forward, one foot in front of the other, 1 mile after the other. So yep, there it is. So I knew it was in there somewhere. Just keep moving forward. So I'm going to leave this screen up. This just shows ways that you can connect with us. You obviously all have my email address, Tom Jordan. For those of you who want to take your nutrition to the next level and really feel like that's an area of opportunity for you, I encourage you to reach out to Tom because he does work with our athletes and can help you develop a tailored plan to your needs. And then also too, I encourage you to connect with us on social media. We're active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but probably mostly active on both Facebook and Instagram, not as much as Twitter. But I encourage you, if you haven't followed us yet, please do so because we'll be putting some, I think, pretty helpful content out there between now and race day. So with that said, I'm going to open the webinar up now to the Q&A session, or the Q&A phase of the webinar. And if you have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box. And I'm going to stay on here for as long as necessary. If there's something that I didn't cover and you want to touch base on, whether it be on the training programs themselves or just something that you've been thinking about, please, there's no question too simple or silly or anything. There's no judgments here. We want to make sure that we get all the questions answered and all the information out there to the group. So while we're waiting for questions, why don't everybody who's on the webinar right now, go ahead and type in what race you are training for. Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Chicago. I got a lot of Chicago's. Is anybody doing their very first Chicago marathon? Awesome. Yes, we got some yeses. Yes, yes, yes. Phenomenal. Yes, fifth marathon, but first time in Chicago. Nice, Hannah. Great. So we've got experienced marathoners on the webinar right now, but a lot of first-time Chicago marathoners. And let me tell you, you couldn't have picked a better marathon, or there's a lot of great marathons out there, but Chicago, in my opinion, is one of the very best, if not the best. I've ran Chicago. Nine times, and it's been just an incredible experience all nine times. And obviously, I enjoy it because I keep coming back year after year. So I'm excited for everybody on you. So it looks like Brian has a question. What speed differences would you suggest for a specific finish time at Chicago? What I mean by this is what pace is suggested for the 5K pace, 10K pace, marathon pace runs. Well, Brian, that is a great question, and it's probably one that if the others that were on who are on the webinar right now weren't thinking about, they probably are happy that you asked. And really, the answer to that question, Brian, is going to be different for everybody. A lot of times when you are following a program and there's specific or multi-race pacing that are prescribed in workouts, whether it be 5K to 10K pace, marathon pace runs, a lot of times what we're doing is we're basing those off of past recent race experiences. And what I mean by recent is probably something that has been ran within no more certainly than the last 6 months, but ideally in the last 3 months. And it probably doesn't make sense to base it off of, let's say, a marathon that you ran a year ago, because we're different people than we were 12 months ago. You could have had an incredibly hot day and just had a time that you weren't happy with or that you were not expecting to run. But if you don't have recent race experiences, then what I would just say is, especially for the 5K to 10K pacing, is really run that based off of feel until you can get some races under your belt. And I do encourage people to strategically place races within a training block for the marathon. But if you're looking at maybe like a scale of 1 to 10, and again, this is all relative to everybody. It's subjective. That a 5K, you're probably talking on a scale of 1 to 10 is about maybe a 6 or a 7, and then a 10K is maybe a 5. Okay, for effort. So then we're talking about effort, not necessarily specifically a time per minute per mile. So, but hopefully and ideally, Brian, you've got recent race experiences to compare, and then certainly there are race calculators, training pace calculators out there that you can find. And if you are interested in knowing what those are, we can certainly connect offline, and I can send you a few of those. So John asks, and I hope that helps, Brian. John asks, any suggestions for a vacation interfering with training? Late July vacation falls right in the time frame that we are stepping up the long distance running. It's not always possible to plan a long run while traveling. Yeah, John, that's the challenging thing, right? When you're training for a fall marathon, is the bulk of your training falls right during vacation season. And so, first and foremost, I would say, obviously, stating the obvious, do the very best you can to get your runs in. Now, if you have to move a long run up to a Friday or Thursday, that's fine too. I would just encourage everybody that if you're going to be doing a lot of modifying of your plan because of vacations or just other things that are interfering, then let's connect and figure out a modification, not only for probably the week of that vacation, but for maybe the next couple of weeks post vacation, just to make sure that we are on the right track. I think that's pretty important. Now, obviously, it'd be great if while we're on vacation, if we could get up first thing in the morning and get that run in. and then just be done with it and have the rest of the day to spend with family or whatever it is we're doing. But if you want to move a run up or back here or there, I think that's fine. We just want to be consistent mostly throughout training. So, but we can definitely connect offline to get a truly personalized modification if that does end up being the case. And I hope that helps, John. Got a few more questions coming in. Jennifer, during the week, I sometimes have to choose between running on the treadmill or running outside with the double jogging stroller. With the stroller runs, the speed work will definitely be slower. Yep, which is more beneficial, slower stroller runs or the treadmill? Well, I can empathize with you, Jennifer, because we have two small children under the age of 5, and we have a double jogging stroller. And most of my runs during the summer are pushing them, and they absolutely love it, and I love it too. I almost look at those runs as a form of strength training as well, just as effective as hill running. Ideally, we are going to be running most, if not all, of our training runs outdoors. Now, I know that may not be realistic for some, if not all of us, right? Whether it be because of the situation that Jennifer mentions or just weather. If weather is truly a concern, then there's really no shame in jumping on the treadmill and getting your training runs in. But in this case, with the stroller really affecting your pacing, I think that if given the opportunity, and I'm in your position, and I really am looking to hit a mark on race day, then I would maybe opt for the treadmill, just to really hone in on that pace that you're shooting for. But don't discount the fact that pushing a double jogging stroller really is helping you build that strength and endurance in other ways too. So both are beneficial. But if given the choice and knowing that it sounds like you might have some time goals in mind for your training runs and for race day, I might opt for the treadmill. Hope that helps, Jennifer. Yep, no problem. Hannah asks, is it discouraged to do a, shorter run, parentheses, 3 miles and strength training on the same day? Well, Hannah, you probably noticed in the training programs that I put out, I have strength training prescribed on anywhere between 2 to 3 days per week with your runs. As a matter of fact, I am a proponent of keeping your hard days hard and your easy days easy. Okay, so I would actually prefer that you do your strength training on the same day as your runs, even the shorter runs, and there's even a little bit longer runs that you're going to be doing your strength training. But here's the deal: you're always going to do your strength training after your run. Your runs starting now through race week, those are your most important workouts of your weeks. And so we do that because we don't want to do a hard strength training session or boot camp or whatever it is that we're doing out there before a run, and then really jeopardizing the quality of the run, and worst case scenario, maybe causing us to get injured because we're starting in a truly exhausted or depleted state. And so there's also too that we're doing our run or strength training after, because we're going to be going into our strength routines fatigued, and that's going to really keep us from going and doing too much from a strength training perspective. So check out those strength routines that I included in there in the programs, and really try 1 or 2 of those after your runs where strength training is prescribed, whether it be on a Monday, Wednesday, or on a Saturday or Sunday long run, and do that. But you definitely don't want to miss out on the strength training. I think that's almost as important as the actual runs themselves. So Hannah, I hope that helps. Denise asks, on the continuous run number 3 plan, you have a 22-mile run as the longest one. I am very comfortable with that, but I've seen other plans that only have you running 18 or so. Thoughts on that? Yeah, you're absolutely right, Denise. And each and every coach is different. The continuous run plan is, I would call, a little bit more of an aggressive plan. So for those marathoners or those runners who have a few marathon finishes under their belts and who certainly have been consistently running for the last 6 to 12 um, months, excuse me. And so it's definitely more of an aggressive plan. Um, I think the shortest long run that I have is 20 miles, and that's a pretty common distance that a lot of training plans have out there. Continuous run plan number 3 and 4 top out at I believe 22 miles. So really, and the thought process behind that is that, and every runner is different, right? But you hear about hitting the wall. Well, we have enough glycogen stores in our body to really propel us about, approximately 20 miles. And that's when, obviously supplementing with nutrition gels, blocks, electrolyte replacement beverages really are meant to replace those lost glycogen stores throughout the first 20 miles. But I think the 22 miles, is there obviously a huge difference between 18 and 22? Well, it's 4 miles. It's not that great of a difference, meaning you're not going to probably gain that much more fitness, but I think it is just a little bit more challenging for our a little bit more advanced runners. But I think that the continuous run plan is number 3 is a great plan because it's got a great mixture of speed work and strength work and some longer multi-pace runs. So I think that could be a really great plan for you. Hope that helps, Denise. You're welcome. And please feel free, for those of you who haven't posed a question, or even if you have, feel free to type some more in. And I'll just say as we kind of close, and again, if you think of something, shoot me a question. But it sounds like we have a lot of people that are going to be embarking on their very first Chicago Marathon experience, and it really is an incredible race. And I'm so excited for all of you that are going to be doing this event. And the fact that a lot of you are doing it for charity just makes it, I think, so much more meaningful and impactful, and kudos to you for doing that. But it's one of those weekends where, with it being Columbus Day weekend and in the Midwest, you really never know what you're going to get from a weather perspective. So while I encourage people to get up early in the morning, especially on the weekends, to get their long runs in before the heat, it's not necessarily a bad thing to train in the heat, because there's been years where the Chicago Marathon's been 85 degrees and they've ran out of fluids, and this is years back, or it's been 29 degrees at the start of the race. So you really do get everything in between. So training in all different kinds of climate and temperatures is probably the smart thing to do. So we've got a few more questions that came across. If we were going to add miles to a plan, which part of the plan would be best to add miles to? So John's looking for more miles. And I would just say, I would answer that with a question: is if you feel like you need more miles, or I guess I would ask, why the need for more miles? And if you truly feel like you just can take the mileage, so you've got great habits in place, whether it be with the warming up and the cooling down, you're really injury resistant, then adding miles would probably be most beneficial to your long run on the weekend, obviously, where you're going to be mimicking race day conditions. Okay, John. Number 3 is more than I want to train, and number 2 is less than what I'm running. Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, you know what, John? I think maybe what we can do is maybe we can figure out kind of a combination of both of them, but where you are maybe doing some of the number 2's plans like weekday runs, but maybe doing more of the long runs that are associated with plan number 3. But anytime people want to add miles, they can do that. There's sometimes an opportunity to run a couple twice a day, whether that be once in the morning and once at night, or adding a few miles here or there to your weekend long runs. But I think that's a case by case basis, of course. And I think, John, maybe we could probably figure out something that's a little bit more customized to your needs if you truly feel like you're kind of at plan 2.5, so in between both of them. So we can certainly talk about that. Brian asked, as a runner from Florida, what are your thoughts on dress prep for Chicago? There was a heat wave many years ago, but what is the usual temp and weather you have experienced? Yeah, Brian, that's a great point, and I touched on that. It was in the 2007 Chicago Marathon when race day temperatures exceeded 90 degrees and they ran out of fluids, and many runners were diverted off of the course and did not get to have their race finish experience. And so I would say, a good rule of thumb is always to dress as if the air temperature is 10 to 15 degrees warmer than what it actually is. Because obviously once you get going, you're going to heat up. What I like to do is bring extra clothes. So they have throwaway spots at the start, the race corral, when you're getting ready to start there, that they will then donate the clothes to local homeless shelters. So typically in the morning, you can expect anywhere between probably 30 to 45 degrees at race start, which race start is, either 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, depending on the wave that you're in. So I like to have throwaway pants and a throwaway long sleeve top, or even sweatshirt, or even a sock cap in case it's going to be super cold. I tend to run in shorts no matter what the temperature is, and then a t-shirt. But yes, Denise, removable sleeves are great. So anything that you can take off and not truly be affected by taking that off is a good idea. So you'll even see people with ponchos or garbage bags in case there's a threat of rain, or just to break the wind. But prepare for pretty much a little bit of everything, and I think we'll probably cover this in more depth when we do our race day prep webinar in late September. But you truly can get any type of weather in Chicago on Columbus Day weekend. But just to sum that up, Brian, I've ran in that Chicago Marathon in 2007 when it got not everybody got to finish because of the heat. And again, I've started. There's been some years where I've started the race and it's been in the 20s and not ever got above 45 degrees. The thing I do want to stress is that, and I think this bears repeating, that if you're not warming up, if you're not cooling down, if you're not strength training, if you're not doing mobility work at night for even 5 minutes before you go to sleep, if you're not properly hydrating, and if you're not getting enough sleep, those are a lot of things that I just listed, but those are really easy things to kind of check off the list. And if you've not been happy or satisfied and feel like you've got more in you in terms of running a better, faster, stronger marathon, guys, that's the lowest hanging fruit right there. And it sounds easy. Well, gosh, how can warming up or cooling down or strength, how can that help me? But it's all about optimizing your performance and training. Warming up is going to help you not start your runs cold. We've all had runs where it felt like it took, 2-3 miles to really feel into the run before it felt good. We want to try to minimize that so we can take advantage of the time, because we're all strapped for time. We all have places to be and other responsibilities. So squeezing the runs in themselves is difficult. So making sure that we're taking advantage. And even if you have to cut a run down by a mile or X number of minutes to squeeze in a warm up, I encourage you to do that. And then again, for a cool down, guys, we're talking about something as simple as a 10-minute walk at the end of your run, just to jumpstart the recovery process. And the strength training routines, please do not be intimidated by any of that, because these are routines that literally can take 10 minutes and you don't need a gym membership. You can do them at home after your runs. Yep, you're welcome, Brian. Yep, Hawk the Weather Channel. We'll all be looking. We'll be definitely posting updates on social media, and I'll be sending out emails to everybody what to expect. Kathleen, absolutely, those are all your weak points. Those are things that we can so easily fix and correct. Develop those good habits now, guys, and not only is it going to help you in this training block, but think long term. Have you been injured in the past? What's kept you from being a consistent runner? What's held you back from achieving your race day glory, those race day goals? What's really held you back? And if you haven't been doing some of this simple stuff, it's the stuff that's not sexy, going out and pounding the pavement and getting a run in. That's the great stuff, right? That's the stuff that we truly want to be doing. But if we can go into this with not just a runner's mindset, but an athlete's mindset, I think that we set ourselves up for success and for sustainability, not only in this year, but moving forward. So I think that we're coming up against. If you have any last second questions, please feel free to type those in. But if there's something that we addressed on the webinar tonight and you want to take offline and email me, we can do that. Shoot me an email and we can talk and figure something out. I'll be working throughout the weekend on any sort of modifications on programs for athletes. So it's top of mind. It's on the top of my mind. But just know that I'm here for you. We're here for you. And even if you feel like you're all alone in this training journey, please remember that you're not. Be active on social media, be active within your community, tell your family and friends if you haven't already what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you'll be amazed just how supportive the running community truly is of all of us. So with that said, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a very small part of this with you. Thank you for entrusting me with something so important as helping you guys out and achieving your running goals. If I don't have an answer to your question, please be assured that I'm going to go out and find that answer for you. I'm here for you. And again, if you need anything and think of a question that maybe you didn't get to ask during the live recording here, shoot me an email, coachkoff@koffrunning.com, or connect with me on Facebook or on Twitter, on Instagram, and I'll make sure that I get your questions answered. But kudos to all of you. Remember, less than 1% of the world's population has completed a marathon. So think about that. If you've already completed that marathon, you are in truly rarefied air. So just remember that we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. So put in the work, take it day by day. And if you do that, we can stay healthy. You will undoubtedly achieve your goals. So thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. Be on the lookout for the recording. I'll be uploading that to our YouTube page. And again, thank you. And have a great night. And best of luck as you start training. All right. Take care.